It was getting hot.
I'm not used to that yet.
Yeah, the robot.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
How are things?
Good.
Pretty good. We're in Mexico. That's what it looks like. The beach.
Oh.
And there's the mountain and some other things. And some parrots over there you can't see, but they're in there. That's the tour.
And the ocean, which it's like so cloudy you can't see.
Nope. It's pretty good though. We just got here a couple days ago, getting settled.
The hardest part has been the water here is really soft because it's treated, and it's like smooth, I guess, like silky, so it tastes funny to all of us, and we're just like, it's like taking a lot of getting used to. It's been a funny topic of conversation. Everyone has their own approach to dealing with it. Like Dave was rationing his water from Los Angeles, and John, who usually sips water, has been chugging it like in like bursts just to get through with it. And then I'm like trying to figure out if I can reprogram my brain to looking at the smoothness as like a sophisticated, oh, it's a nice like fancy thing.
Water. Who knew?
Who knew? What's going on with you? How are you?
Yeah, how you doing?
I'm good. I'm good.
Yeah.
I don't know what the other answer would be. I don't have a long answer. It's a short one. I'm good.
That's nice.
Yeah.
I think the last time we talked, you were in the resort town.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would say on vacation, but you were working.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, always working. Yeah, so came back, got enough of this place, been doing a bunch of viewings to change the house and move somewhere else near the river here in Bangkok instead of changing the city. Cool. As I'm still launching some stuff here. I want to see how that goes. So I'm gonna move. I still have probably 8 months left from this contract. But let's see how that goes. But I'm aiming to move next week.
Can you get out of the lease or negotiating that still?
No, I don't think so. So the worst case scenario, they just won't return the deposit, which is a 2-month rent. Which would be 1 month kind of traveling budget.
Yep.
Yeah.
But I would rather, not waste another 8 months here, as I'm really fed up with the place suddenly. Yeah.
Well, what's the feeling of fed upness? Like what's where's that coming from?
Yeah, where's that coming from?
My hair is alive. It's seriously alive.
It's got its own personality.
Yeah, I like your haircut. It suits you. Like when you took your hat off, I was like, there he is.
The older I get, the curlier my hair gets, which is
interesting.
Yeah, so you could see my aunties just by the look of their hair what their ages are.
Oh yeah.
That's
interesting.
My oldest auntie has an afro, basically. Almost.
That's cool. Yeah.
My family is the exact inverse. We start super curly and then it straightens out over time.
That's cool.
Yeah.
My friend Aaron's hair has changed. It seems to be coinciding with hormonal stuff, which I wonder if that's what's happening, because as we age, like hormones change. So when she was super young, she had like those like pin curl, like tight little curls. Like people knew her as the girl with like crazy curly hair. And then like, I guess through high school and then into college, it slowly started like straightening out until like she was in her like late 20s and it was straight. And it was like for her for a while, it was like identity crisis because she was like, I was always the girl with like super curly hair. But then now in her 30s, as she's getting older, like it's starting to get a little bit of wave back. And I was like, interesting. What if she went back to the pin curl?
I never knew it was a thing until it happened to me. I could see my sister going from having very straight hair, and she's much brighter. She's like super bright brownish, honeyish. And then she had oh yeah. So since the last time we called, we had a call. I'm an uncle now.
Oh, congratulations!
Nice.
Wait, first time?
Yeah, this is the first time.
Cool. Very cool. Congrats.
Thanks.
All right.
Yeah.
You got to start all your new uncle traits. You got to figure out how to teach them, what to make a designer out of them. You know, these kinds of things.
Well, that's easy. You just do the thing. Both of you do this. Like, you just dress how you dress and act how you act. And the kids are like, what's those people seem like interesting?
Exactly.
They seem different. Why are they not treating me like everyone else? Yeah.
Well, I'm starting early. I'm sending those type of clothes already. So here's your new uniform.
Black t-shirts.
Yep. Black t-shirts, white shoes. Yep.
Easy.
Black ball cap.
Yeah.
Cool.
It's cool because I had between the three of us, I'm not a fan of kids really that much or at all. And I never knew what to do with a kid. Like, you know, hey, come say hi. Like, hi. You know, I'm that goofball. What do I say to this thing? And until my sister had her son, and Mama, whoop, now I don't need to make one. I can just treat this one like mine and get the experience without getting all of the
hell.
Yeah, right. And it's crazy how you could just suddenly feel so much for somebody that you never met, or you know, you like, where did this thing came from? Interesting. It's an interesting feeling. So I started kind of looking how to go on a tourist visa back to Sweden to visit. But
that's good.
Yeah.
I like kids, but I don't like babies because they're like a lot of work, and it like I get kind of nervous too because there's a lot going on, and I really don't like it when people. My sister Alexis does this because she's always loved babies. She will like be holding a baby like anywhere, like we'd be at like a party or something, like a family party, and she'll go find the baby and just be like holding it, and then she's like, "Here, don't you want to hold it? It's so cute." And I'm like, "No." And then she'd get really upset with me. And I'm like, why are you doing this in front of the parents? Because then I'm like, I don't want to hold this. Like, it makes me like uncomfortable. And she's just like, what's wrong with you? And I'm like, oh my God. I don't think anything's wrong with me. I just don't really like babies. Like, it's too much. They're soft.
Yeah. My thing with this is I would just tell people I'm allergic to them. I can't touch them. I'm going to sneeze on it. And then, you know, then it's going to traumatize the thing for the rest of his life. Yeah. So it's better that I don't hold it. My grip strength is too strong. I crush things. So
that's the scariest thing.
Yeah. Like I'm worried.
It's just like, here's a button, don't touch it.
And then you're like, but all buttons are meant to be touched.
Yeah.
Nah. Yeah. It's I'm just waiting it until things get hard, and I'm like, all right, I can maybe
when their bones
have the baby.
Exactly. Yeah. My sister has twins, and they're like, I guess 6, 7 now. And I just went back to Florida. My whole family was there, so got to see them again. And the kids are like, they're at the point where they have personalities and interests, and you know, you can play with them and make up games, and like the little boy he's like, give me a challenge. He's always asking for challenges.
Physical challenge.
Yeah, well, physical or mental challenge. Like, he loves playing games, and so I just make things up, and then he goes and does it, and like, I'm like, all right, we can do this. And you just get down on their level and goof around, or like, hey, let's draw something, and like the girl's like very creative, and like they like to act and do all this. I'm fine with that. But any younger than that, where they can't talk, and like, it's a lot harder. I'm just like, all right, well, you just hold him, and there's like communication going on. I'm like softening around this in my old age, but yeah, before I'm just like, I don't. What do you do? What do you know? What do you know?
Can talk.
Yeah.
I kind of like when they can. So crawling and up, like when they start getting mobile and they're like exploring the world, I think that's kind of cool. So I nannied a kid for a while when he was 2, and I'm the oldest of 4, so I feel like I took care of kids. And my sister has I guess he's 18 months old, and he's fun to be around. Like, he hangs out and is like walking around. Like, he's sort of talking, which is also kind of fun, because you're like trying to, like, my mom's whole thing was trying to get him to say grandma, and we were all together on a trip, and he said grandma, and everyone's like flipping out, and he's just like, what did I do? Like, this is great. But he's cool. Like, he has a little personality. His dad likes to tinker with things, and they're building a house right now, or what's it called? Not refurbishing. What's the word, Dave?
I don't know. That sounds right.
Renovating. Yeah, renovating. Yeah. So they've got all these tools and stuff around, and his dad is playing with all this stuff and like doing it, and he's just watching. Like, I'll send you guys a picture. They had to get some concrete removed outside, and he's just sitting watching. Like, he's like supervising. Like, he's just taking it all in. And so he got his own like toolkit, like fake little plastic tools, and he loves it because he wants to be like his dad. So he's like trying to like, screw drive things, and it's fun to watch him like figure out the world. And like, I was taking pictures with a camera, and he was just like, what is this thing? He couldn't really understand, but it has buttons. So talk about pressing a button. So he finds the shutter, like, or the, what do you call that, to take the picture, and he just keeps pressing because it feels good.
Trigger.
And then I'm trying to help him see that when he does that, it takes a picture. He's like kind of it's his attention span's too like short, but I like that age. It's kind of fun, but it's exhausting. So if you don't have a bunch of people around, like when you have family around, it's nice, because when he's done with you and he's just off somewhere else, like when my sister's the only one watching him at home, she's like, it's so tiring. She just lets him ride his bike in circles indoors, like his little tricycle, or a car. Yeah, because he just has constant energy. That's the hard part, keeping up with him.
Yeah.
The part that I realized I'm not a big fan of is, as the baby grows up, they see some, the personality comes up, which I'm like super excited about to see how that's what like happens, because I've never been close to babies. I'm like, I don't know that whole situation, but everybody goes, oh, he's like his father, he's like her mother, and I'm like, don't box it, don't like what?
Let it be open.
Just don't say stuff like that. You can talk like that around other people, but then don't talk like that around baby. They're like, oh shit, okay, I'm like my father, so let's see what the father is about. And then they just go and he like them until they're like 16. I'm like, I'm not my father, I'm not my I hope I'm not like my mother or father. And then they go try to figure out who they are, and I'm like these friends, and then they go 4 or 5 years later, and they're like, oh, who am I? So to avoid all of those, don't box a baby. But this one it seems like a smart kid. Looks at you and is like 2 weeks old, 1.5 week old.
Yeah.
But just looks at you and like kind of upset. It's like attitude. Like, what's this guy? And then just so interesting. Then I had a conversation with my father and how that was like, and all
that's cool.
That happens before you are 7, how that actually shaped you, like your fundamentals, your foundation. and how crazy and unavoidable that is. So whatever mistake that happens from the parents during that time, it's done. It's just there. It is. It's been saved, and you cannot rewrite it.
Yep.
It's just there is. That's what defines this baby now. And then you go. You can't really edit things later, which is terrifying. But let's see how they do it.
You can work with it later, though. At least
you work with it later. Yeah, you can rewrite your code. It's just so the like developmental stuff, like child development, like growth, all of these kinds of things. I've been sort of poking around a lot of that just generally, because I think there are a lot of parallels in bringing ideas to life and bringing products and companies and organizations and groups of people. Like there's early development, there's like a consciousness of how to work with early ideas because they have a maturity, right? A line of development. And there's a lot of like sort of things that you can take from parenting that make a lot of sense into how to raise something and give it the best possibility for healthy like thriving. So I think having watching a kid and helping the kid grow is a good way to like mature your practice of business and building and these kinds of things. And there's a bunch of interesting literature about all of this. I haven't like dug in a lot yet, but I'm going to start playing with it. Just these mentalities about, not holding too tightly, not smothering, giving room, like the things you're talking about, like how you handle reward and punishment and what your mentalities around these kinds of things are, how you give room to flourish, but also set boundaries and constraints that allow for growth. I don't know. It's an interesting, and it's a fractal, right? Like we as humans have to do this over and over and over again. And we are going to probably in our styles of creation have like relationships to the kinds of things that we're creating and nurturing, right? Like, a child is not a project as such, right? Like, and so that mentality is an interesting one to apply to the creative process. But yeah, I don't know. It's cool. It's cool that your dad has an understanding of these kinds of things too, so you can talk to him about it.
Oof. He he's so what? So he wanted to become I'm not really sure. So he studied psychology and got his certificate and everything. And he's like, yep, I don't want to do this. I want to go become a doctor. Mm-hmm. Then he ended up being just teaching it. And then, but I always consider like he's very smart. Just talking to him about, and he's very, how old is he? 73. Very adaptive for that age, which is remarkable. I haven't seen anybody adapt to different life situations as quickly as he does, and then accepting the truth as he always puts it, and then moves on, which is great.
It's a skill.
That is a big skill.
Is. Yeah. Really is. Yeah. Anyway, so that's the uncle stuff.
Mm-hmm. Well, we both had uncle experiences. Yeah, go ahead.
Dave and I were talking about the concept of like the parallel between kids and ideas. And one of the hardest things I think to think about is that you don't own your child. Just like you don't own an idea, like it's like a life form kind of itself, like on its own. So like, but you are a steward or a parent, like you're nurturing the thing. But yeah, there's like, why there's this human tendency to want to like contain and like protect and control. Like why, this is interesting. Like, why do we tend towards that? And then there's another like side of it where there's like neglect, where it's too much. It's like the responsibility thing. We don't know what to do with the responsibility that you're granted and like how to relate to it, but it's hard.
It's just a form of you that kind of lives on. So you're like, I want this to be the better part of me, so you better succeed.
And then there's a lot of pressure.
Yeah, there is some and it's crazy how I think personality comes from what you actually remember that's been said to you. I have some weird phrases just left with me. I've only heard it once, and then I'm like, this is it. And I carry it around. I'm like, this is the truth. But it's very difficult not to feel ownership over its future, or the baby's future, because it's part of you. It comes out and I'm like, all right, I'm responsible for this kid for as long as I live, and my entire kind of life goal is to provide all of the things that the baby needs in order to get to where they want. And I think the funnest part is probably going to be, hey, here, come play with this. Nope, that's not your thing. All right, here, how about this? And then you figure him out. I think that part is the coolest part. Then just kind of supporting whatever the baby finds interesting. But they previously had a conversation about anyway, this is it's interesting, but I would definitely not have one. Just my father, like, maybe time. 32, it's catching up, maybe you should reconsider. I'm like, nope.
Like, no, this just helps solidify things here. We're not doing it.
I mean, this is the thing, like I like the idea that of being, so who was I listening to? I was listening to or reading something usually about the role of like sort of men and development and growth and these kinds of things, and the different roles that you can play in helping newer generations, and the relationship between the generations. And as you grow and mature, playing the role of like an uncle or somebody who can mentor, who can be like somewhat distant from the close interactions of family, right? Because that's a different sphere of influence. And then like the more male figures that especially a boy has, but I understand women a little bit less, right? Like that can give them a perspective on the world that helps them fill in who they are. And then there's a right relationship there. There is a care and an art to that, right? Like, and there's a mutual growth that can happen by like investing in that relationship. And I like the idea, even if we're not planning on having kids, but like being, having some relationship and responsibility to other friends' children, or, my siblings' children, and figuring out the art of doing that well. Like I can see later on, like I have like a sort of a creative outlook in the world that like a particular type of smart kid might benefit from, right? Like kids for whom maybe like sort of mathy or more logical pursuits, like I can sort of discombobulate that a little, and like show alternate paths, and learning how to teach is part of development of craft and development of person, and I look forward to playing around in some of that, right? It's also a settling force, right? Like as the energy to like build things in a very particular way sort of disperses or becomes something else or matures, like the teaching concept sort of seems to filter in. But yeah, I don't know. A bunch of that stuff. I mean, being around my niece and nephew has brought a little of that up.
Yeah, I think I don't know how things are with you guys, but for me, uncle and auntie, that's pretty much the coolest thing. So you are very much influenced by them, which I kind of recently coming to realize that I'm heavily influenced by the lifestyle of my uncle, because I kind of always looked up to him in a way that he was so free and so spontaneous and adventure, and kind of took on whatever risk for the fun of it. Not a successful one, but very, very spontaneous. There were some, drugs involved. He was like crazy type of a person where he holds it all together. Fast driver, would just come pick me up and then would show me tricks with the car. But then it's just hey, so for your birthday we're just gonna go for a drive and then buy a game. I'm like, cool. And then I would sit next to him and he would drive like crazy, and I'm like, this is crazy. I would come home all shaky, and I'm like I can't wait to do that again. And moving around all the time, and then I'm like, a lot of it you kind of get, it's so dangerous, like who you admire, because you don't know, and then you go and live your life and I'm like, fuck, I'm exactly that person. There's so many things that I took from that just because I admire some other things. It's so hard to not influence kids, but then who are kids without the environment? So it's just,
I mean, you will influence them, like knowing that is the case, like, and that they are little mimetic sponges. They will just soak up your behavior.
Not swearing around them. Like you'll see, like there's always stories of parents that are like, I said fuck in front of the kid, and then the kid's just walking around just going fuck, and then you can't be like, don't say that, because they're like, oh, that's bad, and they're like, and I get attention for saying it, and then you just sort of have to like let it pass. But I've heard so many stories about this where parents are like, I didn't, like, it just slipped, and then it becomes a whole thing.
Yeah, I've been thinking a lot about that. Like, so if you know that they're sponges and they are picking up like every layer of your behavior, because everything is new and interesting and like learnable, and their ways are not set yet. And so, the best thing to do in that case, one of the better ways of teaching, is to live in a way that is aspirational, like, which means working on your
version of yourself you can be. I think,
and then rather than like having to overtly teach, just teach by being. And if you are teaching by being, it means working on your being is the best thing that you can do to be a good teacher. Like understanding.
I had this experience growing up, not that, I don't know if it was conscious, that like my aunts and uncles, specifically on my mom's side of the family, we grew up like with our cousins, and we would do like family trips and get to travel with them. So we get to see and experience like aunts and uncles and cousins. Like there's definitely different ways of parenting that we would pick up on, because we're all comparing notes. Like, your parents let you do that? That's crazy. Your parents let you do that. And then you'd get together, and like some of the things that the parents usually wouldn't let you do, you'd watch your parents negotiate it, where they're like, just let them do it. And like some of the kids are like, yeah, let us do it. The other ones are like, I can't believe you never got to do that. But it was sort of like a communal sort of environment. So whatever is going on in the lives of these people, everything's just on display. So you could pick up on all of the nuance. I liked that. Like I have memories of just watching and sort of comparing to like what my experience was. And I got in trouble one time because my mom is like crazy tidy and everything's in its right place. And her sister, what I experienced as a kid was I couldn't believe how messy their bedroom was, and I said something and I got in trouble because it was like upsetting, and I was like, I didn't mean to like insult anyone. I was a kid, like I was a teenager, but absolutely. It was so different than what I was used to, because my mom wouldn't let anything out of place. Like I was like, if anything, this is a critique on my mom, not a critique on you. Like this feels like luxurious. You can just throw things places. I was like, we're not allowed to do that. Like, yeah. So just little things, like I still remember that. Like it's like that's like a core memory. Like I remember just being like, oh wow, okay, like be careful with how you explain what you're seeing, even if it's just novel to you. People can be sensitive because they feel like they're being compared to someone, but trial by fire kind of thing. I like that, just getting thrown in and then having to pick up the cues and seeing how different people live. I like being able to talk about it too, because that makes it easier.
I think what most people do, they just rush into it as seeing it as an ultimate project. Like this is gonna be, if I just succeed with this is gonna be my life gonna be fulfilled. But you need to do so much unlearning before you have a kid. So you don't pass on shit that you you have or you had and you don't really know about it yet. Because you always think about yourself and how you were brought up, and then you talk to your father and your mother and then how they were brought up, and like, wow, good job on raising me. It's like 10x better. But then it's too late to have those conversations once the baby is around, or understanding, all right, I'm like this because of this. How can I optimize myself to have a super baby?
Yeah, well, that's the thing.
Optimize the baby.
Exactly. I mean, that mentality,
like what Dave was saying, if there's mutual growth, like where you're learning as the kid's learning, because part of it, you learn through the kid. Like you have these experiences where you're like, holy shit, okay, they're doing this thing. And then you have a memory of like, oh, my uncle, like I had a relationship. And then all of a sudden you're like, okay, so how did he influence me? How can I influence? Yeah, it's just this weird feedback cycle.
Yeah, I think that like coming to terms with the fact that like there is a style of responsibility, and like you're going to screw things up. That's just how it goes. And the kid is going to be this is the thing, like being sort of relaxed but centered, like in anything, like having the confidence that you're going to do the best you can with the tools you've got at the time. And like trying to not worry yourself, because the kid is just going to pick up that tendency, right? Like and if they do, they do, and then that's what they have to work with, and because they're the next round of the thing. Like, and so the more you can settle into like trying to grow together, having it be a partnership in mutual growth, doing the best you can, knowing that it's going to transform you, and then being okay with that transformation, like for whatever it's going to show you, and like having some level of humility in the thing, because it's a humiliating process. Like that's just how it goes, but that's where wisdom comes from, like accepting these things and understanding, and then like taking a look at mistakes, and then sharing knowledge with other people who are going through the process, and then trying to like grow yourself in the thing, like noticing where you have blind spots, and then being willing to like lean into that stuff and be like, well, yes, we got to change this, and it's going to be hard, but there's a significant upside, because one of the things that you're doing there is teaching the kid that like you're saying, identity is not a structure that is set in stone. Like there is the possibility for growth throughout your entire life. Like your dad, this is an admirable trait, like the ability to adapt and continue to grow until you die is what makes like strong, wise people. So I don't know.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I was gonna say something. I was like, I lost it, but I had something. I do find it interesting, the intergenerational, not just trauma, but like developmental milestones that do get passed down, because if your grandmother had a hard time with something or has some identity structure and that gets passed down to your mother and then that gets passed down to you, there's like these opportunities with each person to get to work on the same problems. And if you are around each other, if one person can kind of figure it out, and oftentimes I think the younger person has a better chance at figuring it out because society also evolves. So a lot of the traumas and identity things that are passed down are partially worked out in like civilization. Like people, like it's not, I mean, some people are anachronistic, I'm sure, where they're working on something that's like not common, but it's cool to see how, like, my mom and I do this a little bit. Like she's picking up things where on meditation and yoga, and she wants to talk about it, and like I'm talking about journaling and she wants to get into it, but it's like hard for her to look at her own writing and like sort of reflect, and but we talk about it. And some of that is just her watching what I'm doing and me encouraging her, like, you can do it too, and her finding it in her own way, because it's hard to be like, just go do this. That's hard for her, but over time she's like, okay, well, if you are doing the yoga every day or you're journaling every day, what's this all about? And then she'll slowly get into it and then start telling me about it. Like, I've been doing yoga and it feels good, and do you want to do yoga together? It's nice. Like we're sharing in something, so we're growing in a way. That's cool to see, because I mean, I don't know if it's possible she would have found these things without me. It's not like I'm the only one influencing her, but it's interesting to watch that sort of, I guess it's mimetic, like passing along habits. And I mean, Dave and I do this too. So it's not just like the family. Friends do this. Yeah. It's watching people do things, but it's cool when it's within the family, because there's some oftentimes like entrenched things that you're sort of working through. And sometimes you're not really aware of them, which makes it hard, but working on it together, even if it is not objectively discussed, I think that's cool.
I think one other thing is what kind of helps people or helps kids to understand their parents a bit better is that if the parents are kind of vocal about their own experiences as they were growing up. So you're like, oh, okay, I have an understanding for this now. Like you're new because I was born, I thought you're the God. You need to have everything figured out. But then as soon as you start communicating these things to the kid, then you're like, all right, now I understand. So, you know,
Yeah, I appreciate that about specifically my mom, because my mom is like very keen on like, here's what I've been through, and I had problems with this, and I moved a lot as a kid, so I was like this. So we grew up with like that kind of like narrative of like knowing where she came from and maybe why she is how she is. She sort of wears not her heart on her sleeve, but that too, but her story. Like she loves talking about it, which I think is nice, because then I have a frame of reference. My dad was quieter on that front, but I love hearing people's stories. Like, where did you come from? This has been a big thing Dave and I have talked about, of getting, and even with my family, even on my mom's side, having some understanding of like the family tree and lineage and like who did what and what kind of jobs. So like this was something I did with my grandma and my mom recently when we were together. And there's a ton of engineers on my mom's side of the family. So I was like, okay, that's interesting. And just seeing like what kind of engineering and how were the people like on that side of the family oriented towards civilization and what was their role in it. And does that explain anything about like my mom's behavior or my behavior? Like that stuff is so interesting, how it sort of can like track how things get passed along and why you might be how you are. And maybe like your parents don't directly have it, but you're like, oh wow, there's a bunch of people in my family that were like this. That makes sense that I'm interested in that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the sort of anthropological, genealogical stuff, I think is fascinating. Part of it is like having an understanding of tendency, like psychological tendency, can help you align with your more probable success, I guess. Like skills that stuff that you get for free, right? Potentially because of your conditioning and because of your lineage. So those things may be strengths that you don't even know that you have because you operate within them. And if you understand that kind of stuff, then maybe you can understand how to sort of develop along other lines and how to balance that development. I don't know. And it also helps you with your blind spots because like, oh, if I am a type of person and the people that I've been around are a type of person within a sort of type of thinking, I am likely weaker in these other types of thinking. And if I look into that area, I might be able to uncover a better understanding of myself, which opens me up to more of the world. So, yeah. I don't know, like, going back to talk to my parents, and I have less of an understanding of where my mom comes from because of the like, and sort of intense trauma that happened there with the Holocaust stuff. And I was able to get a bit of more of the story this time around and like, sort of, understanding where her grandparents came from in Germany and like Frankfurt and all of these things and the the roles in society that they played, that like there's some intellectual stuff and there's some things that I didn't know about, and I'm like, oh, I can see a direct correlate with this, and even down into the like specific interests I have in like intellectual pursuit. I'm like, oh, that's kind of where it came from, because on my dad's side of the family there's a much different sort of taste to that kind of thing. My uncles and stuff, they're they're not of that like I didn't inherit it from them, clearly, not right? Like
type of intellect,
no, but they're builders and maintainers, and they're rock steady in certain ways, and they like to goof around in certain ways, right? But like the intense abstractions and like playing with knowledge and these kinds of things, that's locked up in my mother's lineage. And then what did I pick up on my own, right? And these kinds of things. And I think that like for me at least, having an understanding of the like sort of tapestry of who you are and what you've inherited allows you to play with rewriting that stuff, to provide yourself narratives, to like create a plausible narrative self, like something that like you're creating an aspirational self through these practices and this understanding, like this is likely a place I could go. I don't know if it's possible, but based on what I know of my background and what I've been conditioned for and interested in, this is a direction that might work. And what is the broadest expanse, or whatever, based on that information? It's a way of designing a sort of future narrative for yourself. Yeah, I don't know.
I also think that it helps, like for me, I'm just sort of piecing this together now. The role religion and spirituality has played on both sides of my family has been sort of perfunctory. Like people weren't very into religion as like identity, but they would go to church. But the spiritual like exploration, like that's not big on my side of or either sides of the family. So for me, it helps me understand why it's hard for me to look into those things, and why it's also why I've gravitated towards them, but had a hard time understanding how to get into it, because like the extent of our spiritual, I guess, experience has been mostly going to church, like in like these existing church structures. And for me, I got not particularly interested in that, and I want to explore outside of that. And I'm sure there's stories somewhere on some side of the family, but most of it was just going to church, whether it was like I don't know if it was Macedonian Orthodox, but like in the US, it was Greek Orthodox, or then Presbyterian on my mom's side. So, but yeah, there's something very different about going into church and having people tell you, you know, here's how we practice, versus finding texts and reading through them on your own. And then especially like the yoga stuff that I'm getting into more and more, like anything like that where there's like movement practices along with it. I don't know anyone like in my family that got into that. And it's possible, but yeah.
Yeah, Farzad, what's your experience with that stuff, like, or your family's experience with any sort of religious traditions?
So born in Iran, so we have kind of the religion injected to you when you're born.
Yeah.
I think both of them were on and off.
Yeah.
So they're like, all right, tough year. Let's just see what we can do to improve it.
Yeah.
And it's really bad how school is structured, but they would reward students to, if they go and participate in these prayings, you would get better grades. Because they grade you on how well you act. And that's the main thing in order to get into the better schools. You're smart, sure, but then how are you polite? Let's just put it there. Polite meaning they reward you if you are not getting into much troubles, you look down, you talk well with the elderly, and all those things that are actually not really great. You need to get into troubles a lot as a kid. I think that's the best time to actually go and do a lot of mess ups, to find yourself. So if you kind of limit the kid during those years, not a good thing. Anyway, so I was the one that just walking around picking up all of these things, said, oh, thank you for this, thank you for that. No. But religion has always been an on and off thing until and then none of the women in the family were any of the thing that what is it, I guess, what do Muslims wear?
The burqa?
No, it's like so in Iran you just need to have a thing on your head.
The girls. I don't know what the name is.
Yeah, so it's not like so if you go to any Arabian country, you have to have the full blown
hijab?
Kind of
is that what it is?
Hijab.
Yeah. But in Iran
that's
we
weird
have it as
what that is.
Yeah, you could just wear a jacket. You just wear a jeans and jacket. And you just have something on your head, and most of the time people walking around the city is off, so just nobody cares as much as they used to care. And as a country, it's not a Muslim country. It turned Muslim a few years before I was born or after I was born, I'm not sure. Otherwise there was a king, the passport was worth much better than what it's worth now. I can't even open a bank account in Thailand because of the passport, which is crazy. It's Iran and it's North Korea. It's just like
so brutal.
But, but then they kicked out the king, and he comes out, and the country suddenly becomes Muslim as the Arab person takes over. And some people like, oh, should we believe or should we not? And you kind of get forced into it, and because the punishments are so high. So it's fear-based, and the entire religion is fear-based. And I think most are, so which is really not a healthy way to just get you into things. And personal belief being there is just in a community. You can tap into whatever that works for you, but never live your life by one story. I don't know. So that's personal belief. I don't have any. I don't, for some random reason, I was just thinking about this when I was showering today. I'm like, why people, I was thinking, nobody told me anything about how one should live the life. I do believe there is a higher power. Of course, it would be stupid to think that we are the ones. I think, and then life meaning for me is just being pointless. For me, just is a great time to just experiment with stuff and see what you can make out of it. There is no purpose to this. And there's a higher power, but then there is no story there, even if and as I went through some issues, I started talking a lot about these kind of things with my parents, and I'm like, just enough of this stuff. And because it's, the fear is so in you, because they kind of injected it from a very young age. You have a fear of talking against it. So, but I think it's healthy to not, especially with this kid. I was actually against them choosing an Iranian name for the kid, because he's not Iranian. He's born in Sweden with his Swedish ID and passport. Why should he inherit this, fucked up of a culture? But they went with a super old Persian name, which is Aptin, which means good thought, good deed, and good words. I think it's true. I'm like, great, all right, cool.
Aptin?
Expectations there. Aptin, so Abtin.
Okay, that's an interesting name.
Yeah, and Tina chooses this name with a name that is not even Persian. It's just like Tina. She got the best name, and I get Farzad. Like majority of people like Farzad, Far, what? Call me Fa. But yeah, she's like, no, he should have an Iranian name. He's Iranian. I'm like, no, he's not. Anyway,
it's negotiation. No, it's good. It helps me understand things. Like my relationship to the religious stuff is fraught. I mean, part of the thing that, going back to Florida and sort of speaking to my mom about these things. So I don't know how much to talk about this, but so her experience was, coming up Jewish, and with a mother who was escaped Germany in the Holocaust, and the rest of her family was basically killed. And so her relationship to Judaism was pretty complicated. And my mother, and I don't know what I would like to know better. And I think I'm engaging with conversation slowly with her on this, trying to understand her upbringing and where she came into relationship with these things. But I think that her mother, my grandmother, had a fractured relationship with that, and my mother then sort of had struggled with the meaninglessness of life, the nihilism things, and the environment that like at least the United States is in, and like the Western cultures are, you know, that sort of separation of church and state, that in Iran, when you have a state religion and it's all collapsed into one thing, and it's in the schools and all that, there are pros and cons to these approaches. Obviously, you you mentioned the cons, where it's the separation of understanding and the church, and it can get really discombobulated. And so in the West, you know, around the time of the Enlightenment, that stuff started to diverge, and sort of objective scientific thinking became the forefront, and secular thinking, and all of this. And from there, the sort of religious, spiritual traditions, that line of development that we all share, like, and this is, I've been studying this to some degree to better understand all of it. It's been put aside as like sort of mystical nonsense in a lot of circles. And I think my mom has like a pretty like heightened mystical spiritual sense that I've inherited. Like, and she was trying, you know, she experimented with numerology and astrology and all the 60s stuff. And I don't know how much else. She doesn't talk about it a lot, but had like really a tough time trying to figure out meaning and purpose and, you know, higher power and all of these things. And without that stuff, or a grounding in it, or a healthy practice, some people can get extremely depressed and like feel disconnected and isolated, and you know, so she found Christianity and converted from Judaism into Christianity around the time that I was born. And so my early development was her finding the Christian faith, and me being sort of absorbed in that from like a very early age. And she was studying it as like a new believer, which means that I'm like absorbing all of that logic and conditioning. And, you know, the style that she was studying was a lot of like fear based stuff and like rules, and, you know, because she responds well to this. And so I grew up with this like extremely, my imagination is enormous, and kids are anyway, but like I'm like, this is how the world works, and I'm getting it through the church, and we're also moving around a lot. So I'm seeing lots of different versions of this story, but they're still centered around the sort of Christian narrative. And I figured out around the age of like 8, 9 that the worldview that I was being provided by my mother and by the church was not indicative of the reality that we were living in. And like, you know, operating from this perspective where I'm like, you know, I believed it fervently. And then I would go tell kids, and because you're supposed to tell people about the thing, and they're just like, what the fuck are you talking about? Like, you know,
what because the fuck, and why? Like, why would I care?
Yeah, all of that.
Why are you talking about this? Yeah.
And this was brutal for me, like just horrible. And again, I'm moving around a lot, so I'd go to a new place, and this is
just the kids needing acceptance, and like the concept of culture and like status, where you want to be like in groups and cliques and stuff like that. If you are a kid walking around proselytizing because that's what you're around all the time, and kids are just like,
not even proselytizing.
Not on the nose, but just if that's your behavior, and like most children probably didn't have that unless they were raised in a similar way. So not fitting in, I mean, even being in one place, that's problematic and challenging as a child. Like it's hard, but doing this repeatedly. Ooh.
Oh, you know, it's a perfect example of like what unites you separates you, and probably separates you more than unites you. And that's what religion has done to all of us, which is, but continue.
An interesting dichotomy. Yeah.
And so I had a hard break with it. I hated church, hated it. Just, you know, my mom would take us every Sunday, the whole family, and like, And then I was pretty perceptive as a kid, and I would notice people.
Ask, so you started disliking church once you had this sort of awareness around age 9 that this comparison that you were doing, where you could see that socially, like with other kids, this going to church and like the religious structure didn't fit the real world. That's when you started hating it?
I mean, it coincided with a move around age 9 or 10. I mean, I had the instinct coming online, probably starting at 8, because I noticed behaviors of the people in the church, like, because I had a sort of psychological sense around this.
Yep.
I didn't know that's what it was at the time, but people would be saying one thing and acting in wildly different ways. They're talking shit, and there's all the negative aspects of people being people. And I'm like, okay, so the you can say whatever you want, and you can say that you believe these things, but like it doesn't come out in your actions. And so I started becoming disillusioned, and starting to feel that thing that my mother probably felt in trying to find the church, right? And then we had a move. Like we moved, I had like a bunch of friends, and we were living in California, and then we moved to the East Coast and to Virginia. And the culture was wildly different, valued different things. Not wildly different, but for a 10-year-old it was.
I mean, East Coast, West Coast, yeah.
Totally on the grand vibe. Scheme.
Yeah.
Sure. And there, like, we went to a new church, and like I'm growing up, it was hard. So like, and like the people didn't make any sense to me. They were dicks, and like and then I'm like starting to ask questions, like a lot of questions, in the Sunday schools and stuff. No. And then it doesn't value critique and understanding and all of these. I'm wildly curious and smart as a kid, and they're just locking that down over and over and over again. And so I hate being there because, so, and then I start realizing that the logic that my mother is providing me, because I start seeing more of the world, I start meeting other kids, I start, and I'm like, none of this makes any fucking sense, So anyway, so this is my early development around these kinds of things. And so around that time, I basically, and my father is sort of agnostic. He doesn't really, we didn't talk about religion. He's pretty into nature and science and these kinds of things. And he never went to church with us. He didn't like talk down about it. He wasn't like a hard-boiled atheist or anything. So, and I'm like, oh, I'm gonna do that. That makes more sense to me. Like,
How
and
old
so
by this time?
Probably like 11, somewhere in there. And at a certain, like, and my mom is like punishing me for not going to church. It's the worst thing you can possibly do. Like, not giving me any room to explore because the fear-based aspect, like she's afraid I'm going to go to hell. And I get it. I understand now. But at the time, it was insufferable. Like, I needed the freedom to explore. And I wasn't provided any sort of literature or understanding or anything that there was any other way of thinking. And it was really painful, like, because I'm having a break with faith at an age where I don't know how to describe this or think about it. Or
that was what was happening per se. Yeah.
No. So I'm having panic attacks. That's when I started first having anxiety attacks, panic attacks, like
11.
Yeah. And, yeah, it was brutal. And I didn't know that that's what it was.
Yeah.
So anyways, I sort of square that away, and I find sort of science and technology at some point. And that became my new religion, like sci-fi, fantasy novels, these kinds of things, because there are different stories about how the world can work. And like, sort of technical utopias, Star Trek, these kinds of things. Like, oh, you can live in a different way. And a lot of them are pretty atheist. They're like, God is dead, God is stupid. They're pulling from that sort of, you can have an objective view that is measurable and quantifiable, and the world is made of matter, and, the spirit is not really important, right? But at the same time, I'm massively creative. So I'm having like mystical experiences effectively while listening to music and like making things, and you know, like I'm in love with beauty and nature and all this stuff. So it's wildly confusing. And but the sort of technical, like scientific model of the world I held on to until my 30s, and like it, you know, it just wasn't enough. It's like it's too empty. Like, you know, you run into problems where, like, you know, the world is more than just stuff, the more than just objects, more than just things that you can see. And you know, when I left Carbon Mage, right, my family came unglued there, and like, you know, I was ready to move past it, even though I was fighting the thing. And squaring the religion thing was a movement back to some type of wholeness, and I absolutely fought it tooth and nail. I'm like, I don't want to do this. I don't want to look at it. I don't care about it. It's boring. It's stupid. Like all the crazy, and like got to these states of like absolute nothingness, emptiness, nihilism, like meaninglessness. The horrible darkness that's in that. And it took like finding sort of the Eastern practices that look at emptiness and void and nothingness as fullness. There is everything in that nothingness, because the Western stuff, especially the secularized version, is if there is no object, if there is nothing there, then you are nothing, and nothingness is death. So, you know, and then this is where, you know, I found philosophy, like the study of these kinds of things, understanding where the grammar of this stuff comes from, how religions are formed, how they differ between, like how they're working with a similar, like how they're working with being, like, and human beings being with each other, and the different instantiations of these things, and like different sort of lenses on meaning and purpose and all of this stuff. And there's a fuller picture there. And so now the next part is like, how do I take all of this understanding and then sort of translate it in a way to like be able to talk to my mother in a language that she understands? And like working with the resentment I had around all of this was like the way that I sort of grew out of it from being a child, right? Because we all need some relationship to this, and some people more than others. Like mine is just sort of deeper. And having a sensibility and understanding practice and all of these things, like the different types of practice that you can do, and you can sort of pick and choose, because we have access to the world's religions now, and some of them stick together in certain ways, and it can afford you a way of working with people, being with other creative types and mystical types. I don't know, like there is a shared sort of language in the activity of this stuff. And so anyways, that's there's all that. But yeah. So yeah, I don't know. It underlies a lot of what I do now. Like having an orientation to the philosophical sort of like spiritual approach, and then building on top of that the types of things I want to build in the world, and the types of people I want to build with. Yeah.
That's my go-to place. And the reason that I'm moving again. And I kind of realized I've been doing this every year. Almost 1.5 years is kind of my limit. And I've been doing it since I was very, very young. So I can't be in one place more than 1.5 years. And that goes deeper into actually all relationships and such. I need to change my entire environment and everything that comes with it. And for me, like I'm just trying to figure out what happened in the past month that got me to a place where I'm like, I'm done with this place. The place is the issue. I need to get out to reset my mind. I've already absorbed everything that could possibly be absorbed by the environment. I don't get any ideas. So I need to move. I need to rejuice and then just go to a new environment and get all inspired. But in time of emergency, just empty everything. That's kind of my there. You never know what kind of animals just fly in, and there's this giant just keep hitting the mirror, hitting the window, trying to find a way out, and it's just struggling. And it's big, whatever that is, like probably an alien. But but for me, that's the best place to be. I just can't wait to kind of reach the bottom, which is probably not a good way to think about things. Like whenever I talk about for me, life is very much meaningless, and there is no purpose to it. I like that. It's not a depressive kind of a way of communicating it. It's more of there's just a world of opportunities that you can do, and there is no playbook, there is no destination, there is none of that. There's just you mixing things up, and then you just do whatever that makes you happy, basically, and then you try to not listen to how you should supposed to live life. But for me, I always try to hit or kind of reset once a year, where I go empty everything, empty the closet, get rid of, because I do believe there is a muscle memory. I was talking to Griffith about it. Everything makes you to act a certain way because you give it that meaning. So you wear a clothes, something happens every time you wear that clothes, you kind of get into that state of mind. And there's just what triggers different type of your personalities, and place is the biggest one. And people that you interact with, they see, which is insane. Like they see you in a certain way, and you're like, how they see you. So like, okay, I can be that person for you. And then you be that. So I don't know, it probably doesn't make any sense, but the best way for me to grow or outgrow my past self, or just kind of understanding who I am is just keep changing my surrounding until I see what else can come up. And everything there is just you just always get surprised that that was within me. Some people think of it as a lonely way of life, but again, like that is the same thing that comes with the meaningless of things. I think it's a true way of kind of reaching your potential or whatever, but just yeah.
It doesn't sound meaningless. It sounds like formless. Like it doesn't have to follow like a specified track. Like that the world is more open than maybe how you were like led to believe, which makes sense with your background. Like that, especially like the nation state thing. Like this is how it is. These are the constraints. And you're like, no, not really, actually. Like you don't have to live that way. You can live however you want in a more fluid way. So, because it sounds like you find meaning in the movement, in the not having an identity of a specific type. In the other world, that might be seen as meaningless. Like that doesn't mean anything. And you're like, it means something to me, which is totally fair.
About building your own definition of meaning. And that definition varies from person to person and disposition, you don't share, or it sounds like you don't share a style of meaning that other people do. I get it. It makes sense to me. I've done a very similar thing. I moved every 2 years forever. There was a point for me where I had to stop. And like, it wasn't until I met Kristen that I was able to do this and sort of, okay, I'm gonna try to stay in one place. And
we haven't done very good at that.
No.
I have a fear. Just all fear is just in that box.
And that, well, my policy on this is that fears are where the actual growth is. Yeah. And like
snooze.
Yeah, I know. I get it. I mean, you're ready to play with it when you're ready to play with it, right?
So there's kind of a red thread, like part of my background and like lineage too is sort of like there's a playbook of how you're supposed to be, right? You're supposed to go to like these churches, you practice this religion, you follow like the rules, whether it's a civil war in Macedonia, you go fight for the nation's army to defend the land. Like there's all these like big systems in place that you follow the rules. You work your way up the hierarchy in a capitalist society, like very, this is the way to do it. And like Dave, you're talking about like the religion, like being a strong role in your upbringing. This is the way to do it. And Farzad, like nation states, this is how it's done. These are the rules to follow. And then all of us are like, yeah, but what if you don't do it that way? Can you like, this is for me, it's newer, but I think for both of you, the living outside of traditional systems is like, well, yeah, but you don't have to do it that way. So
yeah,
that there's something there about finding and defining your own meaning, your own identity, and becoming comfortable with that. It's extraordinarily difficult, especially if you're told over and over again, and especially if there's a fear component or like a like existential, like mortal, like safety thing where in religion, it's telling you you're going to die. In nation states, it's telling you you won't have a home. You don't have anywhere to be, which is a form of death, right?
Yeah.
So that stuff is super hard to look at. But what's interesting about both of you is that you're like, well, I'm going to look at it. Like you keep coming back to it. It's not like you go and rebuild the thing somewhere else. Like I'm going to go build my own home or some like rigid structure. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to find a way to keep moving, to keep pushing into this, to define my own way.
Yeah. That's been an ongoing internal conversation for the past, I guess, 2 weeks or 3 weeks or whatever since I came back. And I'm like, that's running away. I keep running away. I'm just running away from something. Then I try to verbalize it. All right, I hate being stuck. Like, I don't like being stuck somewhere. That's the biggest fear. And I think it's a wasteful way of living life. For me, new places and new people kind of open my mind in a way that nothing else ever can. And I'm not a person who kind of leans towards any other kind of type of activity that would open up my mind. Like I do drink, but I don't do any drugs. So I don't find anything that can unblock me other than new environments. So I'm like, that's not really running away. I'm not really running away from anything. I'm just kind of running towards something.
I mean, are there negative consequences, I guess? Is there something you feel like you're missing because you're running towards the thing? I think that's the question.
Attachment.
Yeah.
So then you have a space to play with and work with. So yeah, which is not to say that you can't do the running towards the thing while at the same time looking at the attachment. Because I do think there's a thing where some people like fuck themselves up because they find the thing that they're like most worried about or fearful of, and then it's too much at once. They like try to like look at it, and like this is where people have like breakdowns, or they just get totally like untethered because they did too much at once. So I think there's ways of designing how you look at the thing.
And
attachment is interesting. How do you think about that?
That's what it is.
With stuff I know there is a thing to it. So I either have some things that I always have them around me because I like how they make me feel, but most things I need to throw and then rebuild my entire. I'm actually a firm believer of this. That redoing your closet actually does a lot to your growth. There it is. Crazy beliefs.
I can believe
because I do believe how you are. Yeah, I do believe they save memory. They save part of your whatever happened on that day. You wore that, the next time you wear it, automatically without thinking about it, you are behaving the same way. The muscle memory thing. It's all over the place. And this is why I try to avoid music as much as possible, because again, there is that part of it. Some songs brings out a certain feeling or a certain time, and you go, all right, I'm not living in present now. I'm not present currently. I'm just wasting. But the only thing I think, the only bad or the consequences of living a life like this is that you won't have many around. You will have a lot of friends, but you won't have any close ones for long, because you can't really.
Yeah, it that style of attachment to things and people and music, and it has its pros and its cons. And, this is where, like, we have a lot of similarities on this front. And it got to a point where, for me, I wanted more out of my relationships, but I didn't want to have to root in a place. So that balance, so the constraint on that design system was, I would like to be able to move through the world. I would like to be able to experience new culture and new people, and then do that with a level of depth that is typically only possible when you're around people all the time, right? So those things are a contradiction. And this is where Kristen shares something like this. We talked about it, but a different sort of perspective on it. And we're like, okay, so we're going to try the moving around thing. We're going to try the nomadic thing, in some form or another, and figure out means of collaboration and connection, like we're doing now, that allow for the movement, but also the investment and responsibility of deep relationship. Because deep relationship is where you grow. That is where you become, like, the aspirational self. And it's hard, and you need to be vulnerable with people. And the more people you can do this with, the more that you can grow into the fullness of what is possible for you as a self, right? And this required, like, a sort of, like, I didn't have the tooling, psychological, spiritual, tooling, the technologies to be able to do this thing. And so what I started doing is sort of researching, like, how would you go about doing this, right? Like, what did nomads do in the past? And there are religions, like, if you look into the trade routes, like on the Silk Road, the religions that came out of that are more suited towards this type of practice, because people are traders. They're moving through communities, and they need to have deep relationship, because people need deep relationships. So things like Taoism and Buddhism and these kinds of things are more suited to this style of movement. And there are all of these technologies, like spiritual technologies within these things, that can help you relate in ways that are not rooted, that are more
movement based. Yeah.
They are movement based practices.
Cyclical.
So that you, so this concept of, like, sort of seasonality, like moving around the world, staying in places for the time that it makes sense to do this, and then you need to go to a new place, right? This is trade. Trade works like this, So okay, there is a school of thought that's thousands of years old that you can pull from and start to, like, this is what I've found. What happens is, or what I'm finding that is happening is, I am so much more comfortable and uncomfortable in living this way. Like, there are things for which, like, every time we go to a new place, there is a tearing up, there is a removal from connection, and that can feel extremely negative. But, like, what is the practice of seeing that through a positive lens, right? What is it affording, rather than what is it, losing you? And so lots of these, like, sort of cognitive flippings and all of this other stuff. But there is a way to to live deeply, like with this style of life, but you'll have to give up certain things. But like you're saying, the giving up of things is the sacrifice of things is part of the process of growth. And so it's balancing all of this, and then having a sort of conscious awareness of doing it, like writing it down, discussing it with other people, working it as a problem, like, you know, designing a lifestyle that a style of living, a style of being that is in alignment with the way that I want to be in the world, right? Like, you know, we're here for a while, we embed in the place, we get to know it, you know, it has its effect on the way I think and the way I interact, and then I can pay that forward in my work, because it needs to be in service of something for me. Like, it needs to be something that I'm then teaching or then putting into the style of work that I'm doing, and then offering that as a possible way for other people to try this thing, like, so they can fork it, they can pick it up as their own code base or whatever. So like having a game that has the complexity that matches the complexity of my mind, like, helps me feel centered in a way. This is where I've found, you know, and all of this is a work in progress constantly, and it may change. It may be that all of a sudden I'm like, well, the nomadic thing doesn't make any sense anymore. Like, it's time to put down roots and like really dig in. I don't know. But for now, this is what makes sense, right? And so the things that fucking terrify me and freak me out, like, it's about building a tool set that lets you, like, it's about building lenses so that you can look at this stuff in a way that is not traumatizing and, you know, like, will break your psyche down, because I can do that. That's not hard. It's a lot harder to take a look at it slowly, unpack it, like, be able to explain it to myself and to other people. And then when you work with those, or when I've worked with these fears, there's an opening of energy that happens, like, because I'm no longer operating from a place of scarcity in those places. And I can see a broader swath of possibility, but there's a necessity to expose, like, to the fear, but that requires tooling. You have to have the right tooling for this stuff. And it took me try after try after try of just like brute forcing it and fucking whatever the hell, until I'm like, all right, well, where are the psychotechnologies, the kinds of things that allow you to get into the psyche and mess with this stuff? And maybe it's spiritual practice, maybe it's journaling, maybe it's whatever, and everybody has a different sort of set of these. I don't know if any of that made any sense, but that's what popped up.
How difficult is it to live with somebody? I wouldn't call this spontaneous, but it's very different. I've kind of realized. Like, I was having a long conversation with M because I'm like, yeah, I'm not happy. I'm not happy because of what? I'm done with this. And I know it because I have some weird things and I still haven't figured it out yet, but I do shake at nights as a kid, you know, like you have some fear in you that you are not feeling safe, and like you shake. I get like muscle traction or whatever you call it. Yeah. And it's like an exercise. So you would actually wake up the next day and you feel kind of you've gone for a run. And I'm like, and it's, for me, is a signal of I'm too afraid of living the life that I think I should, because this thing doesn't make me happy anymore. And I'm kind of forcing myself to say, or to live it, because like that's what normal people do. Like, why am I so hard to contain? I don't know how to put it. Then I'm like, all right, it's probably doesn't make sense to most people. But I need these kind of things to operate normal.
Sure.
I need my environments to change. I need my environment to be a certain way. And I do need to move around, and I grow kind of bored too quickly of things. I always have it, but I always had to have a fear of, if I say it, that's probably not a good thing to say, because it might make me seem emotionless.
Yeah.
But I'm like, it has nothing to do with it. Just my belief of not just, I just don't think you can just live life a certain way for a very long period of time and expect the same result to happen. It's just, you need the newness to just keep going. Anyway, I'm all right. I'm fine with the fact that this probably gonna sound very, very weird to most people. Very new, like not normal that you would put it, and then they would probably put it on me that I'm doing it wrong, because like, why are you making things very difficult? I'm like, that's just, for you it seems probably difficult, but for me it's just the way it is. And I'm like, oh my god, like that's me. Like I'm trying to figure myself out, and if I try not to be like, this is the way you should be, and then probably this is a way of running away from certain things by doing just jumping around and all that, or you need to that's just the way I am. And it's probably very heavy for the other person to be in a relationship with somebody like me, or Dave.
I think so. One of the things that's coming up is like identity structures. We've talked a lot about this, and like rewriting identity and being able to figure out how to live without a fixed identity and deep relationships.
Yeah.
Because it's lonely if you are constantly switching things up and people can't keep up, and and if you haven't figured out a way to maintain relationships, whatever that looks like. I think that's, and like part of this is looking at what scares you the most. So there's lots of things that are happening in order to live like your best life kind of thing. What's interesting, like when I'm hearing you talk, Farzad, it sounds like you have an awareness of like what you're working with. You're not quite sure what to do with it right now, but that's sort of how life is. And having the awareness is good, and looking at like, what is it? What am I doing? Having that conversation with yourself, with the people that you care about. And if they can be there to have the conversation with you as you grow. Some people can't hack it though, like you're saying, it won't work for them because it's too disruptive or it's too complex, and they're just like, I can't deal with it. They're not the people that can be around you while you're working through this. And however you work through it, you work through it. If that means that you keep moving every year and a half until you're ready to look at it, that's just how it goes, right?
I'll say it
hard. It is hard for some people because maybe they don't understand it. And then all relationships are interesting, because some people, you'll find people that are just like for me and Dave, I don't know, like it endears me to him somehow, like his sort of I don't know, like he wants to look at the stuff and then he gets really grumpy about it, and like I don't care, like, and he's always like, why do you, like, how do you put up with me? I'm so grumpy. And I'm just like, I don't know, like I like it, like I have no idea. Who really understands, like I don't know if I could like pinpoint it, but there's just sort of like a trust that he's working through something. And I find, and maybe because we're so different in our backgrounds, and so like watching him work through stuff I think is interesting, because I don't have that experience, but we do have like a commitment to growth. So like he's growing. That's nice. I can grow with him, and it pushes me because it's a totally different thing that I would be looking at. So I get to like we were talking about with kids. So as he's working through something, I'm like, okay, well, how can that reflect on me and how can I work through that? Yeah.
But I think my thing was just I don't think I need to figure something out. I just think I'm slowly kind of getting mature enough to say, hey, that's just how I function.
Yeah. That's part of you're figuring that out though. Like, this is who I am. Like, and I'm comfortable with that, and I'm happy this way, and I'm looking for other people that will be comfortable with me being like this.
Exactly. Yeah, that's the, I mean, this one took a while for me to take a look at, like, okay, so I have this set of behaviors. And you know, I can try to sculpt myself to be what other people, to show them that, I don't know, that they can be comfortable around all this stupid shit. Like, and it's fine. Like, you can, once you have like some sort of ability to manipulate self and like, you know, build up different personas and all these kinds of things, you can do this, but it requires a fair amount of energy. And it got to a place where I'm like, I don't want to do that. I would prefer to be able to expend the energy on things that I deeply care about. And for a while, I did deeply care about trying to understand how to be in relationship with other people by like offering them like a front end that was like easily accessible. But then I met Kristen and I'm like, okay, I can just let all that go. Like, and that was hard because I had to unlearn these behaviors that, like, to try to normalize myself to offer like a glossy front end. Is basically the way I looked at it. And slowly, like, letting
I didn't
myself
care about the glossy front end.
She doesn't give two shits.
Like,
and
the
like
fashion of it, like, it just,
yeah,
I don't know. But this is where like I had something to learn from him about what role fashion plays and like how that presentation and like what the front end allows for human connection at all kinds of different scale.
Yeah, but coming to terms with, there is a deeper operating principle in my conditioning and in my disposition that has been screaming to be let loose. And like a comfort in just being the way that I am, like, which is, you know, grumpy and skittish and excited and like extraordinarily abstract and, you know, like insanely focused sometimes on like things like growth, where, like, you know, and okay, that's fine. Like, these intensities can be charming to some people and can be off-putting to others, but those people that they're off-putting to, that's fine.
Yeah, like, it's not always charming too. There's another, like,
oh no, there's downsides.
No, it's not even that though. Like, for me, like, I need space. Like, I don't like feeling smothered. So there's times where like he needs to do his own thing and I just don't care about it. And he needs the space to go do that too. So we both get like room then. Going apart, coming together, going apart, coming together. Yeah.
But it comes back to this thing of the first step in that direction is being like, all right, I'm going to be radically okay with the way I am. In all of its like, you know, upsides and downsides, right? And then from that position, like, you have at least a centeredness and understanding where you're coming from, which is what I'm hearing a lot of. And then from there, you can decide what you're going to do about all that and who you're going to surround yourself. I mean, rather than decide, it's sort of become like my experience of this is that it starts just yelling at you. Like, these people that you've been around, they don't
work anymore. Yep.
They're just not. And you can try to try and engage and see if they're interested. But if they're not, then that's fine. They may be later. Like, but for now, like, there is a type or quality of people that I wish to engage with that is something that I don't currently have, and I'm going to have to sniff my way towards. And then, you know, people like Kristen can help me understand the broadness of types of relationship. And what I valued before is still valuable in some sense, but I've outgrown it. So I'm looking for something with, but understanding like the composition of self can help you start to sniff your way towards what you're ultimately looking for in this stage of life, right? So, yeah, I don't know. It takes forever. It's slow.
Just quickly, one thing, I don't want to lose it. I do think with growth, there's this like, it's not like we're molting and we're leaving the past thing totally behind.
No.
Parts of it, you might not be in play, but it's still like part of our own lineage of growth. So I think it's hard to actually run away from yourself, but there is a process of choosing what parts of self that you want to focus on or that you want to embrace, and the other parts where it's sort of like saying, I don't need you right now, and that's okay. Like, you don't have to be a part of my day-to-day, like, because that doesn't work.
There's a grieving process with that, though.
Yeah.
Like these types of self that have gotten you to a place that you're in now, you have to say goodbye to these things. And there are better and worse ways of going about doing that. You can surgically remove them, but that's brutal, And sometimes like learning to like gracefully say goodbye to a type of interest or, orientation to the world and the people that like brings into your life is a tough thing. So, there's an art to it.
Yeah, but I think that the first time that this kind of happened was the first deportation, and I'm like, and everybody around me are just all sad and everything, and I'm like, like I can get rid of all of this, and I can just date from now
start
on
over.
what's gonna happen. I'm in full control of it, and I get just the same thing that happened to me on the second deportation. I'm like, can't wait to just get out. And I just love the fear of letting go. Like, I'm just distancing myself from whatever it was in the past, and I feel always very much boxed by how people perceive me very quickly.
Sure.
Based on the first interaction. You know how you see somebody and then
you're the guy that does this.
They say the wrong name and then kind of like, now I'm that guy to him or to her. I need to put up with it because who has the time to just go through this? That there are just so many of that during our day-to-day life with everybody that we meet, that once you kind of relocate completely and then we're just limiting the stuff that you take with yourself, and I'm like, great, now I'm gonna start over. And so this new place that I'm moving to, it's bigger than this, but there is no furniture. I'm like, great, I'm gonna buy all the furniture for this place, and I'm gonna completely design a new lifestyle with it. I'm like, what else can I do? And it just like seems like The Sims, I'm just gonna create my own house and then see what that brings me.
Morning. It's great. Sorry, 1 second. We were pleasantly surprised. So we're all on Zoom calls right now, so it's working great. Cool.
Is that a wing? What do you call it?
Where Dave is?
Behind the glass.
Yeah, so I'll go walk over there. You can see.
Cool.
Yeah, so I'm like in a room right now. Dave's on the balcony outside of it, and then like I'm behind now. Can you see me?
Yeah, cool.
And then you walk down the stairs this way, so it's like open here with the living room.
But is that thing you sit or is that a light? Like, what is that thing?
That's a light.
Oh, I thought like the coolest thing in the duplex.
Yeah, you can see John down there.
Yeah. Cool.
Unmute.
Yeah. Who was that, Dave?
Probably the owners. I don't know if they're at the front door. John can handle it. I don't know if they're just walking around the property. we'll find out, I guess.
Works.
Yeah.
So Farzad, I think what's kind of cool right now, this is like a big growth moment potentially, because in the past with the deportation stuff, that was a force function outside of you, and now you are choosing how to like instantiate change. It's not happening to you, like, and then you get the hard refresh from the outside. You are choosing the hard refresh. You're like, I'm gonna move. I'm gonna do this thing. No one's telling me to do it. I'm choosing it.
How sick is that? That's pretty cool. Now that you say it, I'm like, oh my God, I shouldn't look at the Shutter Island. That movie is so fucked up. But I was grown up in a very, very safe environment, or as safe as my father could make it. I'm like, nobody can influence fucked up thing to this guy. Or influence him in the wrong way, and then you shouldn't spend time with that person or that person because they are like this. And then he always like, I always tell the truth about things, so and I'm like, all right, great. No, I'm just overload of information. I'm like very young, and then we had to move to Sweden, and suddenly from a good place to now I'm in camp, refugee camp, just interacting with all kinds of people.
Totally different. Yep.
Yeah. And I'm like, what a best thing that was, because I just came out of my shelf very, very quickly. And then I kind of saw I can interact with all kinds of people and I can make all my friends. Then every time anything like that happened, I kind of welcomed it. And when it doesn't happen, I force it to happen. Yeah. Which is this whole moving thing that I've started since I was 18. 17. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there are ways to go about doing these things, and you're conscious that you do them, right?
Yep.
And so if you're conscious about a practice and an activity, then with every type of activity, and especially one that you do frequently, there's an art to it. And there are better and worse ways to do it. And, being very good, like a master craftsman at moving around, there's, like anything, you can treat it as a thing that you can play with. So, and it sounds like you're headed in that direction. So it's cool.
And it's so interesting that all creatives have this exact same things. There needs to be the way of life for creatives. These are the things that you're gonna have challenge with, just coming to senses that you are an emotional person. Just deal with it. Number one. Number two, you have insanely high expectations of yourself solving every little problem that is out there. All right, get to your senses with that. Third, you either go deep or you just vaguely ignoring things, to just waiting for things to disappear. And that comes the obsession with creatives. It's both people and place and object. It can be whatever. And usually with friends or relationships, it become big people. You go so deep into the person and the whole thing, figure them out. All right, what's next now?
But that third one is interesting. Like what I found is, there are different levels of depth across a bunch of different levels of development with people, and there are certain people and the types of people that I find that are best suited to my disposition are people for whom they are constantly surprising. Like the same thing that you're saying you dislike about how people, they have you figured out or whatever. There are people who value the understanding that there are depths, and they can be worked with. They can be, there are, like Kristen, for instance, our relationship is sort of formed on the idea that we are constantly surprising each other, because there are new sort of facets that are revealed by interaction. Like, we understand each other to a degree, but then all of a sudden there's a new formation because it's there is the allowance for this, right? There is the allowance for the person to grow and form and like surprise you. There are ways of knowing that she possesses that if I can that I don't understand. Like, you know, she thinks in a type of text, for instance. Like, this is a pragmatic one, and like John, the guy that we're living with right now, he has a similar sort of disposition. There are ways that he sees the world that I don't get. Like, I don't understand how that works, and vice versa, right? And so we can teach each other like these different types of perspective. And there's no fully understand because they're growing their own practices, right? And there is a mastery of craft and outlook in the world that is this concept of continuous growth. They're not static; they're dynamic people, and being around dynamic people is this constant sort of challenging, like moving, rejiggering of like the types of people that you can be in concert with each other, right? Like, so that, but not everybody has this tendency. So, you know, like it's a lot of people, like, for whatever reason, they like their sort of narrow way of being. So I don't know, like, sort of challenging myself to be around people like that more often has like broadened my understanding of people in general, which has been good. So I don't know, that sort of sparked that thing in me. Yeah.
Yeah,
it's tough though. Yeah, because those people tend not to look like anything you understand. They like, because if you knew what they were, then like, and the weird dispositions of certain types of people and how they think, like, this is what I've like come to understand. Like, oh, okay, I've got to unload all of the like precepts that I have like built up to operate in the world, so that I can like, you know, there are people for whom they don't value the certain types of things that I value, that I came to value as survival mechanism. And like, particularly people for whom they're a lot healthier in disposition, whatever that means. They're more centered. And those people used to seem very boring to me, but they have something to teach, right? Like, they operate in the world through a different lens. And so the more I interact with these types of people, which, and there's a broad swath of them, the more I learn about how I can encounter different sort of, I don't know, ways of thinking, ways of artistry, ways of creativity. And this massively broadens the possibility of what I can abstract and the types of things that can be built in the world. So I don't know. And then you have to collaborate with these people, find frictions, and then translate those frictions. This is the most fun thing to do, I think.
But that's the part, right? So you say they are more healthy, they are more aligned.
Yeah.
And then there is the grade. So that's how you go about grading yourself. But then I'm like, this is, I think alignment or just being healthy is just understanding and like completely being fine with how you are and not pushing yourself to be any, like, I shouldn't work to become, I think just how you are shouldn't be worked on. It's just, this is how I am. The only thing that should be worked on is just other things around you, and you evolve, but you don't. I think that's a healthy thing, as instead of,
that's how you see it.
There is like there is an alignment that I need to meet, or I need to behave a certain way to be.
Yeah, I mean, that's your definition of healthy.
Yeah.
Right. So my definition of healthy is that, and then building on top of that is there is artistry in evolution. So there is a way to evolve. There is a way to grow, and that's based on where you're at and what you're looking to achieve and what you're looking to understand in the world, right? And there are periods where being okay with where you're at is fine, and because where you're at is working, right? Like, and there are other times where, like, think about being a teenager, right? Like, you're trying lots of stuff, you're trying to figure out where you fit in the world. That to me never stops. Like there's a different orientation to it. Later on, you're like, okay, so I know a kind of where the niche I want to operate in, but like, how do I operate? With whom? Like, what are the types of people that I wish to be around? What does that look like? You know, like, and there is a natural possibility for growth based on the types of people that you're around, right? And that changes over time. So if that's the case, and this is my understanding of it, part of that is that you are already like who you are, and that's fine, because it can only be that way, right? That there is no necessity to change yourself to be a way that other people think you should be. But right. there is the possibility of like working with the blind spots that we all have innately, and working with those blind spots affords like less suffering in the world. You know, this is a sort of Buddhist principle, like a wisdom. Like I care deeply about increasing wisdom, because increasing wisdom, the byproduct of that is spreading wisdom to other people. And so that engine of growth for me is a lifelong process. That's not for everybody. That's my particular outlook on it. And I find it engaging. I find it a challenge worthy of effort. Yeah. So everybody has to find their challenges and their ways of being. And this one just is it's not for everybody. So, yeah.
Yeah. It's interesting. You always jump on a call, start from some random things like, I'm on call. All right, let's just talk about that.
There's sort of a theme though. Yeah. The identity thing and like teaching and growing, like that's all part of like it's it's interesting how that one starting point and then
we're just finding what's alive. And like there's no agenda. The agenda builds itself. Like this is what is alive in the group, and then we sort of sniff it out and then see what comes up. I don't know, it's a fun practice. Like this is something that more people should be able to do.
Right.
It's hard. Like finding the people that you can do this with, I think, is one of the most important parts of being alive. I don't know.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
It's a good thing to practice, because I think it spills out into the rest of your life. Like, because if sensing the ability to do this with a person, like knowing that might be possible, trying it, poking, being like, are you another person that is willing to look at these things? Is this is a good way to find valuable collaborators and people for whom like they the thing you were talking about, your dad, even like having a relationship with reality, with truth, like whatever that means for the person, and like at whatever level, like that makes deeper relationship possible, because they're willing to step back from what they believe, question those beliefs, and do that together. I mean, what else? This is great. this is where you have like insight. So that's the practice of wisdom, I think, or at least the communal practice of wisdom.
Worst thing that I probably will try to avoid is that I was listening to a podcast when I was running today, which is not often. It sounds like it's been like 3 weeks that I did any type of activity. But COVID, just all the gyms are closed and all of I want this person around. Let's kick off a project together.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Not a and I kind of see that's how I make friends, you know, like, all right, this is such an interesting person. What can we do together?
Yeah.
And then I ended up kind of hiring them, which is not the best way. But I'm like, yeah, I should probably stop doing that and just hang out.
It's hard because the work thing is easy. Yeah. I mean, I had this same tendency.
Peering, friending, yeah.
Yep. How to be a peer with somebody, how to like, because I don't think the project thing is bad. I think that like, this is where our relationship, we don't need to build any, we're doing this. And then if something emerges from this, then it will be a natural growth based on all of us agreeing to have it happen, right? So like, this is a style of work that is entering into things as peers, like respecting each other, that the thing could fall apart at any time. And the thing that's holding it together is our mutual like love of doing the thing, which is tenuous. It may not work, but that's the stakes. That's the challenge. Like, how do you show up in a way like openly and fully so that you want to do it again and they want to do it again? Like, this is, and it takes a while. It takes time. And like, you know, it's the way that I've started to come to this is that, like, I'm going to show up and I'm going to be as open as possible. I'm going to give as much as makes sense, you know, to move the thing forward. And I'm going to be freaked out and, you know, not know if it's working, especially at first, and trust that if that approach, like being honest and authentic in like discourse, not trying to manipulate the thing, not like being there as you know, helpful, listening, actively engaging, all of these kinds of things, that if it wants to grow, it'll grow. You can't force these things. Like, you know, this is where like the true friendships and true partnerships come from. It is giving it room to let it happen, right? And like trusting that the continuous interactions will deepen the thing, that bonding over time gives you the foundation to do something that matters in the world. And that's where meaning comes from in projects, right? And project like building games and little things to do together, that can help induce that, right? But I don't know. I think I'm finding the most value in finding relationship this way. And then this is how, like, Carbon made in all my projects, this is how they grew. Like, oh, we're just going to do this because we trust each other to do this. And it's the most fun thing to do. Like, it happens. You don't even have to, you don't plan it. You don't even have to see, there's no strategy other than like, how do we keep playing this game? So yeah, I don't know. It's a good instinct.
Yeah, it's interesting.
You can't hire your friends.
No. So like,
don't make friends with hiring people.
Yeah.
Our conversations, like, I didn't really know you before this, Farzad, but like at this point, the style of our conversations and like the way that we've been talking, it's not really identity specific in a specific way. Like, you are this person, I am this person. So I was just thinking, I would feel comfortable bringing anything up, I'm pretty sure, with you, which is weird because like we haven't known each other that long, because it hasn't been like centered around you're in that role, I'm in this role, Dave's in this role, we're doing some specific thing. It's just whatever comes up. So that's kind of cool because it's like really open, which means it can be whatever it needs to be in the moment of however we're hanging out or spending time together, which is interesting.
Yeah, the freedom. Yeah. Go ahead.
No, just some people find it overwhelming.
Yeah, well, it's a lot to track if you're trying to like concretize everything, where oh, you just said that means you're this person, you just said that means you're like, it's like trying to nail things down as like it's more of like a I don't know if it's conservative or it's just like wanting to know how things are in a certain way that it just doesn't make sense. Like, it's like this right now. Just show up for what that is right now. It's a different skill set.
Yeah, it's structured understanding versus fluid understanding.
Yeah. I love to, whatever goes. Like, that's such a good rule. So when you first meet somebody, and I kind of in the beginning, I'm like, oh fuck, I shouldn't probably said that. I'm saying too much. But on the first, anybody ask me any question on the first meet, I'll let you know. Like, I tell you everything. I don't care. I don't have that privacy stuff in my head built in. And it can be overwhelming, or you can go, all right, great. Now we can talk about everything. I'm like, let's just skip a few.
I mean, you're looking for the possibility of deeper relationship. And like, this is a type of recruiting.
I think it's the only way of having a relationship. Everything else is just, in my eyes, just fake. Like, you are coming in, you need to act a certain way. I should say certain things, and that's not. No, it's nice.
People fake get close to each other. Superficial, like it's not deep. Like shallow. It's just which can be annoying. I mean, I spend a lot of my life just being like, like we're doing this again. But I was the stupid person showing up over and over again to places where people, like, that's centered around drinking, like drinking culture. And I'm like, well, why would you expect people to be deep here? Like, this is what they're into. But like, I was into both of them, and I was like, why is it so hard to meet people? And I don't know. It took me a really long time to change, like maybe change the venue, change the activity.
Right.
Yeah. Stupid thing. Growing up around alcohol as like a release valve. I mean, you have this experience, but my experience with it is probably different. But I just became too much of a like social thing. And the people that I found myself surrounded with didn't have a healthy relationship with alcohol at all. So, and then I'd keep finding them because it was fun. Because you get into all kinds of crazy shenanigans, which is cool, but like being a partier all the time, like it just gets old.
I haven't drank in 1 month.
Wow.
I don't, I'm like that. It goes in waves. So whenever coffee to tea to all that, everything.
That's interesting that you made the decision to move in like a more sober state. That's cool. Like, you're like, it's like a clear-headed thing almost.
I think you guys think I drink a lot. No, I mean,
you were telling us that you were drinking a lot.
Not necessarily
pounding whiskey.
Not necessarily a lot, but even like you were saying, like probably once a day or something like that, and it just impacts your thinking. Like, it just does. It doesn't have to be a lot, but like if you don't have it, like the absence of it, I think different styles of thinking or perception are more apparent. I mean, it's just like anything else. Like if you were working out once a day and then not, or doing yoga it's the same. It's not necessarily like, it's not negative.
For me, what
about quantity,
for me, I don't pick, probably because I took pills, the depression serotonin stuff, which kind of blocks you from getting drunk. So my limit kind of is now gone. So I can drink and nothing happens, but now it does happen. But not as it's pretty high. But for me, I mean, I like to drink on weekends, most weekends, if I get the chance to, but then M doesn't drink. So just, I don't drink. And I don't like to drink alone. So if I drink, it needs to be social, and I don't drink at home. I need to go out. And no, it can go times when I go, all right, I'm just gonna drink smoothies in clubs. That's just my thing now. And I did that for like 2 years, 1.5 years. I'm like, I'm that guy that's like, I'm gonna remember all of this.
Yeah.
I'm also super active because I've just been drinking a lot of smoothies.
Well.
And then I can go into just water. No, nothing. I have this health stuff that I go through. Yeah. Experiment.
Same thing.
Yeah.
Drinking smoothies in the club.
It's the best. Have like really.
It's funny. It's probably so a weird feeling. You're like, I'm getting healthy right now, and all these people are not.
No, you aware, and you are like, if you are single, you are very productive. And
you can see everything that's happening.
And it's just, everything is just so much easier. You're just ruining.
Lost them.
Yeah, frozen.
Probably good timing. I'm getting wiped.
I'm hungry. Yeah.
My mom just texted me about what we were talking about. There you go.
Yeah, pork. You're muted.
I said, did you hear the sound? Recording is in progress.
Oh, no.
No.
It doesn't.
Oh, I get
you rejoined. Yeah, that's good. Yeah. Can't trick anybody into recording them now.
Yeah.
Well, I think smoothies in the club is a good place to end it. I'm hungry.
Yeah, we're both hungry.
It's time. Cool, man. Well.
Cool.
So you're moving this week?
I am negotiating the rate with like 5 units at the same time in the same building, just to fill everybody out to see what happens. The one that I want, it's all of these people are old, and this lady insists that she wants to do the interior design herself, and Thai old ladies here are into very old designs. Let's just put it there. And they just occupy the best places in Thailand and mess it all up. So it's just unrentable. So there is like at least 10 units that I saw in this building that I'm like, this is perfect. Green view, everything. Do I have to have all of this crap inside the house? Like, yeah. I'm like, can I at least move the piano out? No. I'm like, the painting. No, I'm like, can I like quietly? But it's just so much stuff that if I get a storage room somewhere and then move everything out and then move them back in once, it's just not. It's too crazy.
No.
And it's on the 6th floor, and it has a perfect view of the river, and you feel close to the nature. You don't have any privacy issues because nobody can see in, and I like to have always the curtains open. Same as this, these guys can always see. I'm like, fuck it. I mean, I have some awkward, like, I feel like people know me, but I'm like, I mean, enjoy the show. Fucking
they know you.
Exactly. But like the one that I want, she's like, no, I've already hired a contractor. He's coming in, and like that brand gonna be all over the place. And I'm like, that brand is the reason majority of the good places in Thailand is not rentable.
How interesting.
Because it's furnished. I'm negotiating with her sister on the 4th floor, and she seems flexible, but I'm like, they need to do the curtains, and I'm gonna do that.
Her sister?
Like, no, it's their sisters.
It's like a family affair.
What a weird
it's
thing.
Crazy. But there
it'll be good for us when we come to visit. There'll be places that are
easy to rent.
Yeah,
and I always rent furnished because why, like, I want, but now I'm thinking enough. I wanna have the feeling of I want to do my own house. Yeah. I'm gonna rent this for 2 years. And the one that is super flexible is on the 51st floor. And there you are basically
in the clouds.
Yeah, just staring at random birds flying around, which is like what you like stunning view for the first 3 days. Sure. And all right, just remove this picture screensaver. What's next?
Yeah.
But if you are lower, you can see movement. See the river moves. Yeah. Boats just going
closer to people. Yeah.
And everyone like, you nuts. There is no privacy. People from the pool gonna see you. And then the shower is right next to the window. There is like, it's open shower.
Yeah.
It went super creative. It's like the Four Season residence. They're like, all right, fuck it. The shower is all open, and that's a guest shower. I'm never gonna get curtain there. Just enjoy showering there in that transparency.
Well, you wanted to put everything out there. There you go.
He's an exhibitionist. Who knew?
Exactly.
Well, cool. 2 of them are flexible, so I'm hoping just get the contract signed by Friday and start moving everything during the weekend. And next week on Monday, I just send a text message to the owner saying that I moved out.
Yeah.
And thanks. It's been great. I didn't damage anything. And there are some new stuff for you. Just keep it. And that's it.
That works.
I mean, they should be able to rent your place out pretty easily, right?
No, COVID. It's fucked up. Yeah, the country's dying. Government can't hold. I mean, they don't even have enough money to order vaccines. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Tourism is a big deal in Thailand, and they haven't had it for more than a year. 2 years. Goodness. So they're dying. And all of the places are empty, and I'm just seizing the opportunity here. Yeah.
Did your headphone die, Dave?
Yeah.
Mine too, at the exact same time. The left one too? Huh. Weird.
Imagine that.
All right.
All right,
man.
Well, good luck with everything.
Thanks.
See you next week.
See you next week.
Bye.